Welcome to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke, and today's guest is Dr. Carol Talbot. She is the founder and creator of the Possibility Hub. Her work bridges science and spirit, translating the physics of consciousness into practical tools that can open the deeper intelligence that is encoded within human DNA. In this episode, we'll discuss multidimensional intelligence and how it can activate our dormant potential. Carol, welcome to the program.
Thank you, and I'm looking forward to creating some fascinating possibilities.
Absolutely. So, multidimensional intelligence, what exactly is it and why is that important now?
It's our ability to transmit, operate, and receive information beyond linear thinking across time, space, matter, energy, into a field of intelligence. Many call it the quantum field, a field of intelligence that's filled with wisdom, innovation, creativity. And here's the thing, Johnny, most people have had glimpses of it and their connection to it. So think of times when maybe you thought of someone and they called instantly, or maybe a creative idea came sort of fully formed, fully landed. Now, most people rate those experiences as just random. They're a fluke, it's lucky. However, they're actually signs that we're connected to a stronger field of intelligence. So one of the ways I describe this is if you think about when you want to watch entertainment, say on Netflix, you have an account, you log in, and you can watch anything that's streaming on that platform. Except if it's not streaming on that platform, you need to set up another account, another password with another streaming platform. Not only that, you can have the best streaming platform in the world, but if your internet connection is glitchy, then what you're going to see is a little flickering, the picture's not going to be clear. And that's what's happening for most people. Our signal, our connection is there. We don't have to set up a password or an account. It's already there. The problem is our connection is a little bit glitchy. And this is where multidimensional intelligence comes in, because it upgrades the signal.
Multidimensional intelligence sounds like another description of intuition, or is it actually more than that?
It's more than that. Most people are familiar with their five senses and intuition, and then they've heard of maybe the clairs, clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient. However, there are many, many more additional senses that we haven't been able to activate. And one of my fascinations since very early on has always been a fascination with the masters, superhumans and gurus, who demonstrate all sorts of phenomena from walking on water, teleportation, time travel, manifesting huge feasts and banquets out of thin air, or even nourishing themselves off prana, the universal life force energy. And my question has always been, if they can do it, why can't I? So have they been there all the time to demonstrate to us what is really possible when we move away from the conditioning, the programming, the limitations that are being placed on us, and start questioning what's really possible?
Is that related to how many of the intuitives these days talk about us being multidimensional beings? What I guess you're trying to do is help people get open to that multidimensionality then. Is that true?
And in a structured way, because the challenge I see, particularly when I run the multidimensional field scans, is a lot of people are open in terms of their chakras and their abilities from the heart upwards. And most people, when they meditate and they think about opening to those experiences, they go for the pineal or the crown, and they're not grounded. I know with one of my clients, he was able to astral travel, but it actually put him into fear because he wasn't sure that he could get back to his body because he had no grounding. And so that means there's a large part of us missing. And it puts people, when they start Kundalini awakenings or activating some of their senses, a lot of them into fear and not true embodiment. So multidimensional intelligence really puts it across in a much more structured way, and also helps people not only upgrade their energetic signal, but to tidy up their DNA, because your DNA is also linked to your abilities.
All of us have heard many times that we're not using anywhere near the full capacity of our DNA. So is this waking up dormant strands or not necessarily?
It's cleaning up our DNA. It's estimated that 95% of the stream of consciousness that should be available to us is turned off. So it's like having a light bulb on a dimmer switch. And this is probably one of the reasons that most people don't remember who they truly are, their true cosmic history and their multidimensional nature. So one of the ways that I describe DNA is it's obviously a transmitter and receiver of consciousness. It's far more than just the color of your skin, the color of your eyes, and your genetics. It's far more than that. But if you think of a film strip in a projector, when light comes in and hits the film strip, it projects what's on the film strip onto an outside screen. Now, if there's scratches and glitches on that film strip, then the movie that you're going to watch is going to be very glitchy and scratchy and not a very pleasant experience. And so it is if there's distortions in our DNA and hits the DNA, DNA projects onto our perceived holographic reality. And because there's distortions in our DNA, what you get is trauma, dis-ease, negative experiences, drama. We don't get a smooth ride. So as you tidy up your day, then the movie's much calmer and much nicer. So one of the biggest distortions, Johnny, is obviously, if we go back through millennia, digressed races have tampered with our DNA. And I know this is something that you've read about and discussed with other guests. But one of the biggest distortions of our DNA comes through our food and our water supply, because our food is filled with additives, pesticides, so is our water supply. And this further degrades our DNA. And I think we see the degradation in society today with all the diseases, which ultimately come a lot from the food.
And the media as well, because media is food, albeit not exactly healthy food for the brain.
We're bombarded food, everything's food, so it's a very difficult program to release yourself from. And my thesis for my PhD was bioregenesis of the DNA blueprint through source feeding. Now, source feeding is the breatharian path, nourishing yourself off prana in a different way. It's a radical approach, Johnny, I'll admit that. But I wanted to see if it was possible to tidy up my DNA and start activating different senses. Some of my additional senses have come on in a very astounding and beautiful way.
So additional senses, is that something like mediumship, psychic ability, or is that something different altogether?
For different people, it'll be different, what are mostly termed psychic abilities. For me, what came in was able to mirror a person's multidimensional field. And the way that I get the information is pre-language, which is said to be the purest form of telepathy. Because if you think of the way animals communicate, the way trees and plants communicate, there's not verbal language. And actually, it's verbal language that slows the telepathic process down. And the reason that more people are not telepathic is because they want the language. So for me, it's almost like a zip file that has to be unpacked.
That's the first time I've heard that. Did you say pre-language?
I did, pre-language.
Pre-language is the purest form of telepathy. So isn't that the same thing as communicating without words and reading minds, or at least reading energy?
Similar, and rather than sending specific thoughts, it's almost like getting a zip file, and you don't know what's in the zip file until you unpack it. So I don't know really what's in the zip file until I start putting it into language, which is what takes me the time. So it's been a very big experience in trust, because For me, I always, and for many people, they'll want their psychic abilities to come online with bells, whistles, fireworks, and then do it 3 times so I know that it wasn't a fluke. But for most people, intuition and the additional senses come in a much quieter form. We're conditioned and programmed to have our senses and our awareness outside of us rather than go into stillness, quietness, solitude. So we're bombarded by noise, so we miss a large degree of what's going on.
Is that related to, if not the same thing as saying the brain does not create consciousness, i.e. consciousness survives the death of the brain?
Exactly, because we only have to look at people who've had near-death experiences when the brain isn't there. There's also evidence of people who have been found that half of their brain is missing, and yet until it came up on a scan, they didn't know they were able to function without that. It's more a decoding device more than anything. So, like you said, it's not the seat of consciousness. I wouldn't even say it's the seat of intelligence. It's just an organ that is able to decode and help us perceive reality.
It's a receiver where you can tune in a station or hook it up to your turntable or tape deck or whatever, but it's the same thing.
Exactly. Like the TV doesn't create the programs, but you run the programs through the TV. It's like a radio doesn't create the music. You tune in to the music.
So if the brain is the receiver, your theory is that the DNA acts as an antenna.
Yes.
How does that work?
It depends on the clarity and the cleanliness of your DNA. And right now, it carries distortions. This was part of my research for my thesis to see what would happen if you tidy up your DNA and if it was possible to bring more of your DNA online and activate some of the higher senses. So far, with the work and the research that I've done on myself and working with other people with what I've created in multidimensional intelligence, the tools, the techniques to assist people to accelerate their shift and open up to new possibilities. It's worked.
Let's say this is a perfect model. What's the relationship between consciousness and the multidimensional intelligence?
It's your ability to connect to a wider field of intelligence and consciousness. Okay? Now, you're already connected. So if anything, Johnny, it's more of a remembrance, remembering who you are and what's possible. I remember researching certain musicians, certain creators and inventors. They often, particularly musicians, say, the song was just there. It's almost like they didn't have to write it. They went into a particular zone. And going back to what I said earlier, we've all had those experiences where you think of someone they call or a brilliant idea lands, but we dismiss that. What if we could make those on a regular basis and have access to more creativity, more wisdom, more insights? So again, I go back to people who've had near-death experiences. And if you studied or interviewed, and I'm sure you have many of these people, they'll say that they're in a field where they can ask a question and they know everything instantly. It's all there. Their challenge is when they come back into this density to put it into language. And so the key here is, how can you expand your frequency range? So think about it in terms of, we only see a small spectrum on the visual scale. We only hear a small spectrum on the audio scale. So what I'm suggesting is we have the ability to broaden our perspective of what we can receive. So when I work with people, one of the things I do is get what I call their baseline signature frequency. This isn't one frequency. This is the kind of like playground that you operate. You know, we are electromagnetic beings emitting electromagnetic field, and all organisms read energy. So many people walk into a room and go, oh, this feels off. Or conversely, you walk into a room or meet people and think, oh, this has a nice feel about it. Now, if we can recognize that, it also means that we ourselves are electromagnetic beings. that oscillate and vibrate at specific frequencies. So it's all energy. Now, what we emit creates our outer world. It creates a playground that attracts, that resonates with certain experiences that could be negative experiences, trauma, dis-ease. Certain people are attracted to you. And when I work with people, they say, Carol, that's fine, I'm here, but I want to be there. I get the baseline signature frequency of where you want to be. You can't just slap people there because people can't stabilize that frequency immediately. I don't know, Johnny, if you've ever had a plant medicine experience, but often they'll catapult you into a different frequency and you see, hear, and experience all sorts of different things. But the fact is, you can't hold it. You can't hold it into this reality. So you come back here. When I work with people, it's about incrementally shifting them to a new baseline signature frequency, which also means there's an identity shift, because then you're operating a new playground which attracts different people, different experiences. People often find that certain people or situations in their life just disappear because there's no resonant match. It's like being in a cave. You shout out your name, it comes back immediately. So our physical reality is literally an echo of our electromagnetic field, which includes our thoughts, our emotions, our nervous system. And when I ask people, can you hold one positive thought for, say, 15, 20 seconds? Most people find that thought, even in 10 seconds, becomes fragmented. They lose focus. That shows you we're sending out a fragmented signal. So the first step really is to come into coherence, to get into alignment with your nervous system, your thoughts and emotions. And that's where the stillness, the silence, the solitude, the stasis comes in, which is almost the antithesis of everything we've been told and taught. We've been told it's out there.
It's not out there. It's actually in here. What I've been told is that we need to raise our frequency. I hear people talking about raising our love frequency. So if we were to find a way to raise our love frequency, does that automatically increase the bandwidth or not necessarily?
Your frequency and your energetic signal is very connected to your identity of who you believe yourself to be. So we have to take you beyond that boundary. I don't need to be clairvoyant, clairaudient when I hear people's story to know where they'll be in 1 year's time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time, because that's the story they're operating from. So think of an actor. When they get a script, they get the role, but they also get the backstory of that role so that they can really embody that character. And then they play that role for the duration of the filming, and then they discard it and go back to their own identity until the next role comes. So really, what I'm saying is, if people want to stick with their identity, that is also connected to their energetic signature, their frequency. So it also requires a shift in identity to start taking on a different role. And this is where I often say that the old paradigm of past, present, future is incorrect. We need to be doing it from future, present, create the backstory.
You've also created something called the multidimensional field scan, I believe.
Yes.
And you've worked with people using this. How exactly does that work?
Well, you've also experienced it for yourself, Johnny. So I find a lot of people are wandering around in the dark. It's like they're in the pitch black and they keep tripping up on the same things financially, in relationships, in their career, in other areas of their life, maybe bumping into the same furniture, and they can't see what's tripping them up. So the multidimensional field scan is a mirror of your field. So it's not my perception, it's a mirror of your field. And it looks at your energetic signature, your chakras, which are open, which are closed, what percentage, DNA strand activations. It also looks at karmic patterns, ancestral patterns, timeline opportunities, your key mission. It covers about 15, 16 different areas. But more importantly, what it does is it switches on the light. So you can see from a like the satellite map, the bigger picture, what is tripping you up, what you're bumping into continually. And it also acts like an activation. Now, I don't do these live because, as I said, I receive information pre-language. So what takes me the time is to put it into language in a report format. And the report, when people read it, it starts activating things in their field. So think about if you go to the top of the mountain, you see the view. You may never go to the top of the mountain again and see the view, but it's still active in your field, it's in your memory. So when people get the field scan, they often say there's a air of familiarity about it. It's like seeing your own true self, but from a large perspective. But it brings people back to a remembrance of their brilliance, their radiance, their genius. And that starts to come alive and work in their field.
When you talk about remembering who we are, that reminds me of the people that have had past life memories that go way back 10, 20, 30,000 years to these civilizations where things like telepathy were normal. So it seems to be at one point in our history that we had these powers and perhaps more of our DNA was awakened. At what point did it get shut off, or is that an impossible question?
It's partly an impossible question because our DNA has been tampered with severely by digressed races and further distorted by the food that we eat, our conditioning, our programming, the way that we've been limited. And that's the reason that I've been fascinated with the masters, the superhumans, and the gurus, because I feel they came to give us a glimpse of what's possible. And I feel it's now our time to remember.
Okay. I'm wondering if there's a comparable model of what you're doing anywhere else. What's the history of trying to really examine our multidimensionality and, as you say, reclaim our power, as it were, that was lost thousands of years ago?
I feel it's the whisper, the seed planted in many of us, that there's more. And I remember as a child having those wonderful dreams of flying that felt so real that, again, I asked the question, if it feels so real in the dream time, am I able to activate those abilities in this reality, in this density? And again, that's been my exploration, my sort of more radical approach in terms of whether it's going into a dark room for 10 days, 10 nights, the shifting to a breatharian lifestyle to see if that's possible. So for me, it's always been about pushing the boundaries of who we believe ourselves to be and who we've been told that we are, and opening to new possibilities and helping other people see those possibilities. I mean, one of the things that I have taught for probably over 20 years is I'm a master firewalk instructor, which means I teach people to walk across burning hot coals of about 1700 degrees Fahrenheit. And often I'm asked, why? Why do we need more firewalkers? And of course, the answer to that question is probably no. But what the world does need is more people who can face their fears with courage and push the boundaries of what we've been taught and told. So when people walk across those coals completely unharmed, it begs the question, if I can do that, and I was told and taught that it was impossible, what else can I do?
Why did I just get the image of a poster of a bumblebee that's put above a kid's bed? It says, "We are taught that bumblebees cannot fly." And at the bottom, the caption reads, "The bumblebees fly anyway." Similar, isn't it?
I think that's such a beautiful analogy to express that we've been taught and told and kept in a very limited paradigm. And I feel that more people are wanting to push those boundaries, that there's that whisper in so many people that there's more. And for me, also, I wanted to know, how do we manifest and materialize our perception of reality? And how can we create more of what we want and less of what we don't want? I come from a background of having been a master trainer of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, so very much a lot of quick change, beautiful quick change techniques and the power of the mind. Yet, I knew there was even more than that. And it comes back to frequency, energy, consciousness. And the reason that I've created the multidimensional field scan, the entrainment series to accelerate people's path, and the mastery mapping frequency technology also to accelerate people's path, remembering that we also live in a time-space reality where there's a time lag and a time drag between aligning to maybe a new baseline signature frequency and seeing it materialize in the outer world. There's always that liminal space. And unfortunately, in that liminal space, that's where most people go, it's not working. Why hasn't anything changed? And they go back. So it's about keeping moving forward. And this has been part of my study, my experiment, my questions, and my quest to create a structure that not only supports me and my life, creating the life that I want, but also to help people shift more effortlessly, more easily, when they know deep down there's more. And I see this again and again when people fill in the multidimensional field scan form. I know I'm built for more. I know more is possible. And I love being able to switch that light on for people so they can start to see that it's possible.
I'm thinking about the timing of your work now alongside of what we've been hearing for years now, Ascension, moving into a new earth, moving into the Aquarian age. Is that fortuitous timing, like the best window for your work to actually come to fruition, or is it just coincidence?
The answer to both questions is yes. I have spent my whole life seeking out masters and mentors who are usually not mainstream. Some of them don't even have websites, going on extraordinary experiences and wanting to activate my gifts, and it didn't happen. And everything does happen in its own timing. When you look back, you see that the jigsaw puzzle fits into place. And yes, Johnny, I do think we're at such a pivotal time in our history, in people seeking more. And there's also a large part of the population who choose to stay sleepers. They don't want to give up the car, the lifestyle, and sometimes it means rejecting what we've been programmed and conditioned to expect. And people want someone to follow. It's a bit like allopathic medicine. People go to the doctor and say, fix me, without taking any responsibility. For me, this is a time for us to become sovereign, to think for ourselves and to find our own path and find our own way. And when I work with people, I will only work with them for a very limited period of time, because my goal is to get them to the stage where they're sovereign and they can move themselves forward. They know whether it's a internal alignment issue or whether they haven't got the alignment with the outside world, whether they're in the liminal phase, whether they're truly embodying this new identity, so that they become sovereign and embodied.
This window, some people say we're about to go into it, which is the Aquarian age or the new earth. And you mentioned the sleepers. So some people are going to go on to the new earth or the new world, and some people are going to be left behind. Is that true?
I don't think we're going anywhere. I think we transition, and our world changes by every decision that we make. We choose what timeline and what reality we want to be in. So I feel the old model of ascending, rising up to the fifth is a little bit dated and misguided. One of the most important skills you can develop is the skill of discernment, to know when something is a little bit off and not quite right. And I know this is something that's really, really important to you with the discussions we've had before and the way that you've modeled Closer to Venus and with what you do. That level of discernment and the conversations you have is really, really important.
Thanks. Hopefully we're doing something right here and we're educating ourselves. I'm still a student and always will be.
Exactly, aren't we all?
Yeah, you're right. I could not agree with that more. Anything else that we need to know, at least for today?
I think we've covered so many topics. I think you also know, Johnny, that I can speak about this as I'm passionate about it. I can speak about it for another couple of hours.
We may have a part 2 in the future then. We'll talk about that in the green room. Other than that, thanks for coming on today. Carol, great stuff. In the meantime, how can our listeners find you online?
Okay, website is multi-dimensionalintelligence.com, or link with me on Instagram, Carol K. Talbot.
You've been listening to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing. In the meantime, you can find more info on closertovenus.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.